Welcome back to Sitnos, Scared in the Name of Science, Season 2, Episode 9, The Do's and Don'ts of the Fairies.
Ooh.
I've been inspired by our last couple of episodes. We've talked a lot about the things that we know we shouldn't be doing and the things that we should do. So I thought I'd summarise them into one mouthful. Morsel? Mouthful?
Clip? Bite?
Sure.
I don't know, sure.
We've talked a lot about the different types of fairies, and I will say, I think if people haven't picked up on at least a few do's and don'ts already, have you been listening? Today I wanted to look at a few specific examples of the fairies being crossed, and therefore why you shouldn't tempt them to get their revenge on you, Al. But what do's and don'ts can you think of so far?
Do would be leave them offerings.
Mm-hmm.
Don't would then be gobble up those offerings that you left them and replace it with rubbish,
Yeah,
because
don't do that.
they ain't gonna like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're quite sensitive little fellows.
They are.
They don't like it when you know their names.
Mm-hmm. Or if you get their names wrong.
Yeah, or if you spy on them, try and enter their portal, or if you yoink anything from their realms.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say those are probably the main ones.
Absolutely, yeah. Those are also some of the ones we talked about with Professor Diane Purkis as well in our episode a little while ago. She mentioned specifically about the offerings that you should give them, and I'll come on to that a little bit later. So we're going to get started. One quick thing before we do, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, follow and comment along. We also put up posts and respond to all comments that we receive, so please get involved with us on all of our social medias. So number 1, mess with their home and they will mess with yours. The first rule I'm going to discuss is, we mentioned actually this last episode, it's about respect. It doesn't just apply to fairies, but in general to everybody. Respect other people's homes, respect where they live, respect their belongings. However, the fairies in particular take great offence at their supposed homes being disturbed or disrespected, to the degree that they have placed curses on entire governments for messing with their supposed homes.
Valid. I think more governments should be cursed.
Fair enough. The strongest place, which we did talk about in a previous episode, that has an association with fairies in their homes is Ireland. Because across Ireland there are an estimated over 40,000 fairy forts.
That's quite a few.
Yep. These were originally built during the 7th to 12th century, when Ireland was mostly rural and relied on cows for their survival. They were bovinific, I guess. To protect their cows from thieves and enemies, they would create forts so that they could sleep in those forts and then bring the cattle in if they needed to protect them. They would often be made from earth, stone, wood, whatever was on hand, really. However, they were quickly abandoned as people started turning to agriculture compared to husbandry, and the forts then became associated with supernatural beings such as ghosts, spirits, and all sorts of ooky spookies.
Oh, so that pretty much goes back to what I was saying about the burial mounds and forts and stuff. And
Yep,
yeah, cool.
Absolutely. And I'm going to deep dive a little bit more into a specific couple of examples for this as well. So whereas you were like, they are just the humans, I'm going to be like, but the fairies. And if that isn't classic us, I don't know what is.
Yeah, very true.
So when this officially became linked to fairies isn't known, probably through oral traditions most likely, but by the 1850s it was very well established that these old forts were linked to fairies and were called fairy forts. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about you, but I love to hear the downfall of a millionaire. No idea why. I think it's my working class background coming into play here, but there is a downfall of a millionaire supposedly linked to one of these forts. So in 1992, the Quinn Group, headed up by Sean Quinn, once Ireland's richest man, decided to expand their quarry in Aughrim, County Wicklow, Ireland. In order to do this, however, they would have to disturb the Aughrim Wedge Tomb, a stone monument that had stood on the slopes of the Slieve Rishin in the town of Aughrim for over 4,000 years. Could you describe what you can see in the picture?
So I'm sensing you want something beyond a pile of rocks.
If you want.
It is a pile of rocks arranged in a circular shape with more vertical rocks in the centre of said shape, resembling ruins of a structure.
Yep. So, to give you a few bullet details on this tomb, and a picture of it is available on our Instagram or on the video if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify. It has a 5-metre gallery at the centre of it, which is the upright structure that you can see with almost like a little roof.
Cool.
Which is where the entrance is also split to go into it. It's surrounded by several stones built into the central room at right angles. And when it was excavated in 1992, they found 3 cist burials, inhumed and cremated remains, as well as beaker and food vessel pottery. Al, could you explain to our lovely audience what a cist burial is?
Isn't that like a type of prehistoric burial in which the corpse or deceased person's body is kind of placed into like a rectangular stone grave?
Absolutely, it is. Have you heard of the beaker people?
No, that sounds like something that like chemists would be called.
You know what, you're not far off actually. So within archaeological circles, the beaker people are a group of individuals who either traded or migrated, or both, from ancient Iberia, which is now Spain and Portugal, northwards towards the UK with a distinctive type of bell-shaped pottery known as beaker pottery.
Oh, cool.
This is a big deal in the archaeological world, as although the idea of beaker pottery spread throughout Europe without the need for mass migration, they traded the ideas and the culture, this wasn't the case in the UK. It's now been proven that the beaker pottery came here because of mass migration. Humanity's DNA pre the introduction of the beaker people was very, very different to what was found post us starting to discover the beaker pottery. It completely changed what people in the United Kingdom look like. So it went from what it was before, and with the beaker people, their heritage led to us having lighter skin, fairer hair, and lighter eyes as well.
Oh, interesting.
So it's all the beaker people's fault. But it's all a long-winded way
I think fault's harsh.
of saying that this tomb was of significant importance historically, culturally, and archaeologically, and yet it was given the go-ahead to be completely moved, stone by stone, to a completely different site from where it was originally built. It was moved 8.2 kilometres out of the way of the quarry on the mountain and to another property of Sean Quinn's, at the time a 4-star hotel, as a tourist attraction.
Oh, that's gross, man.
Right? Even as, like, people, I would be like, no. So, the fact that this was given the go-ahead, I can understand why any fairies living there would be pretty annoyed. Many locals stated that although Quinn had done a lot of the locals a good thing because he provided a lot of jobs, it was a poor decision that would anger the fairies. And in fact, the owner of the Molly Maguire's pub in Ballyconnell was quoted as saying, "There would have been a lot of people who would think you could never have any luck after moving an ancient tombstone." And anger the fairies it may have done, because 20 years later, Quinn declared bankruptcy, stating that he had only €11,000 left in his bank account, down from 7.2 million.
Wow.
It was even stated in his own biography that this was the reason for his downfall, was the bad luck of the fairies. Thoughts?
I mean, people can lose money for lots of reasons, especially when you are a idiot with a large amount of it. Only, fairies aside, immensely disrespectful to move a tomb, especially to then move it to the site of a hotel to be a tourist attraction. And I think most people who lose all of their money would love the convenient cop-out excuse that it was a fairy curse, but in reality it's their own poor behaviours and personal qualities that would have led to them to lose the money. If you made such trash decisions in one aspect, you're going to make them in a lot.
Yeah. For me personally, if it was just the rocks, I don't see that it would have been such an issue, because fine, but it's the fact that there were burials on site as well that really bothers me. I did try to find out whether they were all human and where they'd actually been removed to, but I got in touch with the council and the local museum in the town, and neither of them have got back to me as of recording this episode. So if I get an update, I will let you guys know. I will say, one of the obvious questions that popped up for me when I first researched this story was, why wait 20 years to get your revenge? Like, why? Why would you wait that long? And I think there are a couple of different options that came through my head when I was considering it. Firstly, I wonder if they chipped away at him bit by bit. The best revenge is one that is small, and maybe by doing things bit by bit, it led to the bigger revenge of him. You know, fairies are known to be sort of trickstery, and they would never have gotten their revenge to simply make him regret to this level straight away. So I wonder if by chipping away at little things or like misguiding his luck a little bit, it led to this bigger issue later on down the line. Secondly, fairies don't perceive time the way that we do. We've talked previously about liminal spaces, so maybe by moving through their liminal space, it displaced them both physically and temporally as well, because that space has now been moved. That would throw you out of sight, out of sorts even. I've read in several places that fairies are very patient creatures as well, so you may think that you've gotten away with it, but they are just waiting and biding their time, so much so that generations later are the ones that have been punished instead of the person that actually pissed off the fairies. My third theory, however, on why they would wait this long, actually brings me to my second don't. Do not cut down a fairy tree. I wonder if Sean Quinn was actually the victim of the curse of Tara that was spreading across Ireland since 2007. The tale goes that when the M3 road in Ireland was being planned and created, they destroyed ancient fairy forts and trees in order to create the road. So much so that it reignited the old curse of Tara. Have you heard of this before?
No, I haven't.
I hadn't either. So I'm going to summarise it probably very poorly, but essentially, Tara is a hill fort. It's known as like the seat of kings, essentially.
Didn't I reference it?
I think you did. Back thousands of years ago, a king who resided on Tara was at odds with Saint Rudan, and they were at siege with each other because of several things that they'd each done to each other. I'm not going to rehash the whole story because that's their issue. This only ended after the king had an awful dream about a tall tree on Tara being ravaged by invaders. The king interpreted this tree as himself, and with anger gave in to Rudan's requests. However, as he did so, he laid a curse on the saint, saying, "I'll have ye done to undo my kingdom." So I'll have you done for destroying me. For I maintained the righteous cause, and may thy diocese be the first one that is ruined in Ireland, and may thy monks desert thee. So essentially, Saint Ruadhan, you're going to get pulled down, your monk's going to desert you, get lost. Like, you get your way, but I'm not happy about it. However, Ruadhan didn't take this lying down, so marched into the Tara and declared back that nevermore should smoke rise from the roof tree of Tara. Fancy giving it a go at what that means?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So essentially what he's saying is that smoke from houses on the hill fort are never going to rise ever again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, the idea of a roof tree really threw me.
It also threw me, but then I'm guessing houses would be made from wood, so...
Okay.
Roof, yeah. I'm assuming here. I could be wrong, and if I am, someone please tell me, but that's my interpretation of it, I guess. Ruadhan's curse certainly came true, however, as that same king died in a very bloody way at the hands of his enemies within a year, and no king of Ireland has dared step foot on the hill since.
Oh, that's interesting.
The thought is that the destruction of the fairy forts and fairy trees has created a curse and led to the delay and move of the M3 proposed path. It's built now, though, by the way.
Right.
And there is some evidence to this curse, and by evidence, I mean really bad luck happened to people attached to it. I do have examples, though.
Okay.
So, for example, the Minister for Environment, Dick Roche,
Cracking name,
approved the destruction of a henge for the motorway. After this, he was held up by an armed gang at a hotel that was called the Druids Hotel as well, which, lol.
Okay.
Fired from his job as Minister for Environment, and then when they rearranged the cabinet, he was the only member of the cabinet to be demoted. Minister for Transport, Martin Cullen, also fell out of a helicopter when one of the doors got sucked off.
Okay.
Yep. A chief of health and safety who worked on the project was injured by a falling tree, and another famous historical meeting place was destroyed, and then the staircase at the National Museum collapsed. So, weird.
It is. It's an awful lot of bad luck.
Yeah.
However, I will say that everyone has events in their lives that are unlucky and unfortunate. It is a byproduct of living. Sometimes bad things do happen to you.
That's true.
And hell, I mean, if we were to go through every bad thing that could have potentially happened in the lives of everyone we know, it doesn't intrinsically mean that there is a curse there. It just means that, stuff happens.
That's true. I do think that the health and safety guy having a tree fall on him, though, was...
That's just irony, though, isn't it?
However, tying this back to Sean Quinn, a spiritual expert, Carmel Deviney, which, what a fantastic name to be involved in this, Deviney, has even suggested that the economic crash in 2007 is a direct link between the destruction of the fairy forts and trees. Indeed, when a tree was left alone, nothing bad happens at all. And I do have an example for that as well.
Okay.
This is a story about the Latoun Fairy Bush. Located in a parish of the same name, the Latoun Fairy Bush is a hawthorn bush which is a supposed favourite meeting place for all things supernatural. This apparently has physical evidence. Apparently. Eddie Lenehan, a local university lecturer and folklorist, insists that white fairy blood has been seen on the tree. Did you know that fairies apparently have white blood, by the way?
No, that sounds really gross. Also, sorry, who said? How do you know it's fairy blood? What is that?
Because it was white.
Oh, come on now. Not to, like, you know, there's many number of white substances that can be found on a bush. You don't jump necessarily to fairy blood.
There was another story as well from a local farmer who apparently found something spongy on the ground around it and decided that that was fairy's liver because they had been fighting.
Ew.
Yeah. And to be fair, this is supposedly the meeting place of the local Munster fairies to battle with the Conno fairies. So
okay, and that results in
liver.
White substance and spongy chunks from
yeah.
Right, okay. Sure.
Anyway, the battle for the destruction of the bush lasted 10 years until the government acquiesced, and the bush still remains there to this day on the side of this motorway that they wanted to chop it down to construct instead. So as you drive on the motorway, you can be like, fairy bush there.
Covered in spongy material and white substances, apparently.
Yeah, what I found really interesting about this, though, is that this is not the only fairy bush listed as a reason to halt modernisation or construction. In England, there's actually a current campaign to save the Ryebank Fields in Manchester.
All right.
This is a legit campaign with several factual and serious reasons for wanting to save the fields, to the degree where they've done ecological surveys. But what I thought was really interesting was that one of their reasons is to save a fairy bush. And I do recommend going and having a look at this campaign. We're going to link it to the outreach section of our Instagram, but have a little look if you want. Mm-hmm. According to them, a fairy bush is any hawthorn tree growing in the middle of nowhere by itself. The hawthorn tree is a gateway or portal to the fairy world, and therefore should be respected and maintained. And it is suggested that if you sleep under a hawthorn, you will find yourself whisked off into a fairyland too.
I'm sure we, in a previous episode, discussed about how going to sleep and, like, being in that transition of sleep and waking is inherently jarring and where your mind tends to play the most tricks on you. So that's probably not true, but, you know,
who knows?
Hey-ho.
I do love, though, that hawthorn trees are really coming up again and again and again. So we've now got oak trees and hawthorn. So I'm wondering if these are these, like, two elder trees type things.
Maybe.
Yeah. My third don't do this is you wouldn't steal a car.
Oh, the classic advert.
Now, this shouldn't need saying, but don't steal from the fairies, guys. Like, or anyone. It's a bad idea. There are many, many accounts of what happens to people if they attempt to steal from the fairies, and most end up dying. Just straight up.
Immediately or eventually?
Pretty close, I think.
Okay, fair enough.
So, for example, there's a 12th century account where a young knight saw lights shining from a hill, will-o-wisps, and found a fairy party.
Ooh.
He was invited to join, but remembered another key rule when dealing with the fairies. Do you know what it is?
But you're not supposed to eat or drink their food.
Exactly. Never eat or drink whilst in fairyland, for otherwise you shall surely stay. Instead of eating or drinking, he stole the cup he was offered wine in and managed to leave. This cup was eventually presented to the Earl of Gloucester, who promptly executed the knight instead for thievery.
Fair. I mean, it's a Earl who stands on his principles, I guess.
Yep. The Earl of Gloucester apparently was also like the illegitimate son of the king, and apparently the cup ended up getting back to the king anyway, so...
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, but wasn't it Jack Jones, I think it was, who stole a flower, and he was senseless for the rest of his life.
Exactly. Do not steal from the fairies. However, here is a story about someone who did steal from them, and might have managed to get away with it.
Ooh, fairies are lacking.
Once upon a time, a butler who worked for the Duke of Wharton, who resided at Eden Hall near Penrith, was working the grounds, as he sometimes did, when he stumbled upon a fairy gathering.
Ooh.
The Luck of Edenhall, a beautiful glass beaker, was there at that gathering. Could you describe it for people, please?
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like a beautiful vase. It's narrower at the bottom before it kind of widens at the neck.
Mm-hmm.
It has some very beautiful designs of blue and red and green and I want to say white, kind of like swirls and patterns. I can't tell if it's painted or blown into said glass.
Yeah, it's beautiful though. Like, it's
Yeah.
stunning. The vessel was stated that should it ever be broken, it would bring great misfortune to the household. And whilst it was still whole, it would bring great luck. Indeed, there was even a poem written in German in the 1800s about what would happen should it break. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah, absolutely. And the goblet ringing flies apart, suddenly cracks at the vaulted hall, and through the rift the wild flames start. The guests in dust are scattered all, with the breaking luck of Edenhall. In storms the foe, with fire and sword, he in the night had scaled the wall. Slain by the sword lies the youthful lord, but holds in his hand the crystal tool, the shattered luck of Eldenhall.
What do you think of it?
Oh, Eden, rather.
What do you think of it, the poem?
It's a beautiful poem, actually. Really, really good.
That is the translation from German, to be fair, so I've no idea how it reads in German. The vessel now lives in the V&A Museum in London, but one interesting thing I found was that once it was removed from Edenhall, the place was demolished. Thoughts?
Well, you're not going to leave things in there if you're planning to demolish a building.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. In all transparency, though, this is a great story, but it is just a story. The Luck of Edenhall was probably made around 1350 in Egypt or Syria, and was traded via the Venetians, where a beautiful decorated case was also created for it. Hence why it has survived as pristinely as it has. So, probably not any fairies, but a lot of lore around it from seemingly nowhere. Out of curiosity, why do you think this random vase would create mystery like this?
Well, if it was like a one-of-a-kind kind of vase, obviously we hadn't really seen anything crafted like it, and it is quite beautiful. It's clearly an impressive artefact. I think, with beautiful old objects that we can't 100% pinpoint the creation of, stories tend to be made to explain it.
Mm-hmm. Apparently it was kept behind multiple locked steel doors as well for protection.
That's a bit dramatic.
My last tale I wanted to get into was the idea that fairies can be kept at bay through the use of iron. Have you heard much about this?
Yeah, I have actually. I think I stumbled across a little bit about it when I was doing some reading, and it was thought that iron is part of the advent of advanced civilization when we start creating things and disregarding nature, really. I read I can't remember where it was, but it was theorising that why we don't see so many fairy cases anymore was due to the advent of a railway, in which all of the tracks had gone down and destroyed or kind of cut off so many sections of fairyland.
That's really interesting. I never thought of that. I love that as an idea, yeah.
I mean, it's 100% not true, but yeah.
Well, I like it.
There's a fun story for you.
Yeah. In most of the stories, it's that werewolves hate silver, vampires hate garlic, and fairies hate iron, but I wanted to dig a little bit deeper and find out, why iron of all the elements, I guess? Mm-hmm. I looked to see if there was a scientific reason, but, it's really hard to find medical evidence when you've never captured a fairy to medically test them. Mm-hmm. So nothing on that route. But what I did find was that it appears to link back to this idea that fairies were classified as demons.
Okay.
So during the English Reformation, fairies had to be completely reclassified. They were an accepted thing, but the idea that these little creatures messing with humans had to be moulded into the Christian religion of the time, as it changed from Catholic to the Church of England.
Classic.
Yeah, it is all Henry VIII's fault that fairies got muddled in with demons, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like with demons, iron was seen as a way to repel them, going all the way back to Pliny's Natural History, where he claims that iron was proof against nightmares and nocturnal demons.
I'd love to know why, though.
I don't know, but it was also, when I read the book as well, it also said that one of the remedies you could do is that you could put it in people's drinks and make them drink it, and then they would be fine again. I think there's something...
Anemia, maybe.
Yeah, I think it is something to do with the fact that we didn't know that we had iron in our blood and therefore we might need more iron in order to, like, be healthy. So that could be that as well. It could be that iron is said to hurt fairies, as fairies is the embodiment of nature and iron is the embodiment of humans and therefore are completely juxtaposed.
Ah, cool.
Just like you said. And the story I will use to demonstrate this comes from Hafod y Garreg in Pentryfolas. A young man was herding sheep on the hills when he came across a lovely young woman. The young woman, however, was crying bitterly. It's not known why. The young man spoke to her kindly and sat by her to comfort her, and when her eyes met his, they immediately fell in love. They had been talking for hours when suddenly her father appeared in front of them and told his daughter to follow him immediately. And she left with her father. Every day, he walked up to the place where he first met her and waited. And waited. Every time, he would go home lovesick and lonely. Little did he know that the fairy woman loved him as much as he loved her. She thought about him all the time and plotted to return to the spot as soon as her father's back was turned. One day, she took her chance and returned to the spot where she met her love, and he was there waiting for her. They chatted, laughed, danced, sang, all until her father appeared. Eventually, he agreed to let his daughter marry the young shepherd, but his permission came with a warning. She can stay with you until you should strike her with iron.
I mean, that seems like a fair enough warning.
So they were married and lived happily together and had 2 children of their own. The night before the festival of the Saint of Capelgarman, which I believe is the 2nd of August, however, there was also talk about July 3rd, in summer, the young man and his wife went together to catch a couple of ponies to take to the fair. The ponies, however, were wild and galloped around the fields for hours with the couple chasing them. In frustration, the young man threw a bridle at one of the ponies. Understandable. By accident, the bridle hit the wife and the bit was made of iron.
Oof.
They both immediately knew that the marriage contract was broken under fairy law. The young man was so upset his heart ached, and he hardly had time to speak to his wife before her father appeared with a host of fairies. He grabbed his daughter's hand and they disappeared, never to be seen again. Now, this story doesn't tell us why the fairies hate iron, but it does demonstrate that fairies despise it. Another clue to this was in the Changelings episode. The imposter mentioned that a key or fireplace tongs could be placed over the cot to prevent changelings from appearing. And what are these things traditionally made out of?
Iron.
There you go. So there's another reason why fairies hate iron. Any thoughts?
If the story's true, just going on that premise, I think it's wholly unreasonable that the wife, who probably also did not want the marriage to be dissolved, got essentially punished. So I guess it shows that fairies are punished by their own laws and strictness as well, regardless of whether or not they actually want the outcome.
Yeah. True, fairies are strict, I guess.
Yeah, maybe they're bound by their own laws and are completely unable to break from them, even if they wanted to.
Yeah, definitely could be. So I'm going to quick fire a few general do's or don'ts for fairies. Most of these come from D.D. Cheney's book. I sort of had a little read through there and grabbed some of the most frequent ones. Some households would put out bowls of cream each evening, both to attract fairies and thank them for bestowing luck. If you annoy the fairies, it's said that you can avert their wrath by spitting on the ground 3 times first.
I hate spitting.
I absolutely agree with you. Please don't spit on the ground. Ew. Saturday is the fairy Sabbath, and Friday was when fairies amused themselves by grooming the beards of goats.
Do you know what? I wish I had so much free time in the world that I could just sorry, Friday's for amusing myself by stroking some goats.
Gotta go plait a goat's beard. The more evil influence of fairies is often said to be strongest during the first 3 days of May.
Ah, that's interesting.
Which has come up a lot.
Yeah.
It was possible to avert the evil fairy influence from your home by scattering primroses across the threshold. No fairy has the power to pass this flower.
Oh.
And finally, fairies will move a building if you ignore everything and begin building it where they don't want it. And this brings me to my final Welsh story. This is an example from St Lychith Church in Llanlychich, near Bangor, Carnarvonshire. And I'm sorry for my pronunciation, I really struggle with the CH sound. The people wanted to build a church in a field called Caer Capel, not far from Plansu Schaff Farm. They began to lay down some foundations for the church, but when they came back the next day, the labours of the previous day had been completely destroyed, and the materials had been transported in the night to a different site across the road. The workmen, however, carried it all back again and resumed their labour, but alas, in vain. When they came back the second morning, again, their work had been completely undone, and the wood, the stones, the rocks, everything were back at the other site. The workmen, and I think this was very smart of them, decided there was no point fighting against the fairies and to build the chapel where they'd been told to. And the church still remains to this day. So, will you be abiding by these fairy do's or don'ts?
Well, I'm not leaving any offerings out for them because I don't believe in them and that's a waste of food. I certainly won't be spitting on the floor because that's disgusting. However, should I encounter a fairy, I will not mug them off, nor take their food, nor get in a complicated marriage with one of them. I don't know.
I will say I'm really tempted to plant some primroses by my doors now, just as like just in caseies.
You love fairies.
I do love
Why
fairies.
would you want them to not be able to enter your house?
Well, I want like the hobgoblins you've told me about.
Well, you can't have it all. There's a thing called compromise, Roxy. And if you want the flower fairies, you got to have the hobgoblins too.
Well,
and there's no children in this household, so you don't need to worry about raw head and bloody bones.
or changelings.
Yes.
So that was my episode on the fairy do's and don'ts. I hope you really enjoyed it. I really loved how many different stories I could find to sort of prove and disprove the fairy do's and don'ts on this.
Yeah, I think prove and disprove are heavy words.
A loosely prove and disprove
Yeah.
then. As always though, please get in touch with us on any of our social medias. We've got Threads, Instagram, Reddit, and obviously where the episodes are posted on Spotify and YouTube. Please feel free to comment, like, follow and subscribe. We try to respond to every single thing that we get. But if you've had any interesting fairy encounters that you'd like to talk to us about, you can get in touch with us at our email address, which is
Scared in the name of science at gmail.com.
Yes, it is. And we would absolutely love to talk to you about what you know and have found. But overall, thank you so much for listening.
Thanks everyone. See you in the next one.